motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. We have had one requested change, and that is to take item 7 and defer it to next week. So, is there a motion?
So moved with that exception and reference back.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Goldthorpe, seconded by Commissioner Arnold. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, this brings us to our regular agenda. The first item is the Crosswind subdivision, preliminary plat and rezone, request for approval, waiver of policy. We'll have a staff report from Stacy Yerington.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, for the record, Stacy Yerington, Development Services, and this is a decision briefing. The application before you today is for the Crosswind subdivision. The project is located at 3535 South Cloverdale Road between Amity and Victory Road. Today's presentation will include a general overview of the project with trip generation information on area roads, intersections, and proposed mitigation for level of service and staff recommendation. This application is for a preliminary plat consisting of 36 single-family homes and 28 multifamily units. The development is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases, with the single-family portion of the site to develop first. The applicant's proposal is consistent with the City of Boise's future land use map that designates this area as compact residential. The development is estimated to generate 519 average daily trips, with 52 trips in the PM peak hour at build-out. Cloverdale Road is currently operating at level of service F, but I would like to remind the Commission that our level of service standards are planning thresholds and is a comfort measure, not a measure of safety or capacity of the roadway. Area intersections at Victory and Cloverdale and Overland and Cloverdale are currently operating at level of service C and D respectively, and planning thresholds for these intersections is level of service E. The applicant is proposing improvements to Cloverdale to feasibly mitigate the impact of the development. The improvements consist of widening both sides of Cloverdale, improving it from a 2-lane to a 3-lane road abutting their site. The widening will allow for center turn lane, improve safety along this section of Cloverdale by allowing turning movements from the future phase 2 portion of the development from the site, and constructing sidewalk on Cloverdale along the site connecting the existing improvements to the south. The applicant is also proposing to enter into a cooperative development agreement with ACHD to improve Cloverdale south of the site from Rootsell Drive to Bott Lane, which both of these roads are collector streets, and to accommodate the 2 through lanes and a center turn lane, again providing for safer turning movements at these 2 intersections. In summary, the intersection of Victory and Cloverdale and Overland and Cloverdale are operating at a level of service E or better. The proposed improvements to Cloverdale through widening of both sides of Cloverdale abutting the site and between Rootsell Drive and Bott Lane will improve Cloverdale to a 3-lane roadway, providing for safer turning movements to the site and area collector streets. Staff recommends approval of the staff report as written. The applicant is here, and we also have a member of Ada County staff here, and they're ready to speak to this, and I stand for any questions.
Are there any questions of Stacy?
Not at this time.
Well, I have one. Could you put the widening back up? So the site is in yellow, and they're going to be widening to 3 lanes in front of that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're widening all the way down to Rootsell, or just between Bott and Rootsell?
President Baker, they will be just widening between Bott and Rootsell. Those are the main intersections and where we have right-of-way, so we would not be doing in front of the church.
So this is to accommodate turn lanes?
Turning movements at those main intersections, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is the applicant here? Please state your name and address for the record.
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. We appreciate working with your staff and trying to work with this waiver request. As you look at the other portions of this section, and it's also in your report, most of everything else in there along this section between Victory and Amity, the Highway District needs to go out and get more right-of-way. We've tried to accommodate as best as possible for, I think, the size of our development, those improvements that we can to help mitigate any impact that we're creating. And with the current situation with Boise City and their sewer extensions, it's kind of limited as to the parcels that are on the west side of Cloverdale Road that will be able to develop. Ours is being allowed because the lift station sits on our property that serves Antler Ridge, and the property to the west of us, the 5-acre piece to the west of us, is the only 2 parcels that I'm aware of in this entire mile section that will be able to be improved until the city of Boise changes that policy. I have people all the time ask me about development and tell me where it's gonna go, and it has to do with sewer. And with the sewer not being extended, it's doubtful that the properties to the north of us, unless an annexation path was to become available for sewer to be extended with the city's current policy. And so I think those impacts and that right-of-way being donated it may be out there for a while, and understanding that impact fees help widen roads. So it might be a while for those other improvements, but we've done as much as we can, I think. Stand for any questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Brown? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I don't have anybody signed up to speak to this. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address this item? Come on up, give your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Betty Berman Solo. I live at 1970 Cananero Way, and I'm representing the Southwest Ada County Alliance. We have asked in written form and have not been told that this was not going to be deferred to an evening hearing at the end of June, just so a number of people, certainly Marissa, Michael, Keith, and Annette, and Joe DeAngelis asked that this be part of an evening commission hearing rather than a noon hearing. I have more flexibility with my schedule than a number of other people, Tanya Clough and Phil Van Sickle. I don't know whether he made it. Maybe he's behind us, but essentially when there is level of service concern, we would really appreciate having an opportunity to have people that are neighbors in that area and have the opportunity to come before the commissioners and state our concerns. The one item I wanted to let this commission know was that the Savannah subdivision did go before Planning and Zoning Commission last Monday. And for the second time, it was initially in April it came before, and the commissioners said that it was not in keeping with the character of what was there, and they asked the developer to come back with something that was more in keeping with a transition or a transition. And on this last Monday, they heard the item, and the developer had made no change to his application, and the commissioners were saying the same thing, that there should be a transition, there should be something that blended with what was there, more compatibility. And you certainly can listen to the tapes that are available.
Okay, that's good, but Savannah, we've already discussed Savannah.
I'm-
And this is Crosswinds, and we
There-
received one email on this from Marissa Keith, but she provided testimony within her email. And so, do you have testimony on this item?
My testimony, Commissioner, is simply that we would ask that you defer a decision on this until the evening, Wednesday at the end of this month, so a number of people that would like to be here could attend.
To discuss the level of service.
To discuss the appropriateness of the compact zone, which is in question at this time. But the level of service, and certainly they would bring questions that relate to the transportation concerns, the level of service in that area.
Okay, so you're not going to provide any testimony on this today?
No, I'd prefer, Commissioner, to,
But if we don't defer it, then this is the opportunity to provide testimony.
I'm hoping that the commissioners will understand the need for deferring it, so I'm gonna withhold any testimony until I know what the commissioner's decision is.
Okay, but the opportunity to provide testimony is now, and if we decide not to defer it, we're not going to reopen the hearing. So, I mean, you can talk about it now or run the risk of not being able to testify on this item.
Commissioners, I know that this zone is going to, and I will provide some testimony now, regardless of what your decision is. But my feeling, and the Southwest Data County Alliance feeling at this time, is that we have a district policy of level of service that it either reads that it's acceptable at E or not acceptable at F. And if district policy is what ACHD has in place to help manage growth, help manage development and transportation, it sounds like it's like a police department having a policy. Even without saying that it's law, it is the policy that the highway district continues to use as they look at these subdivisions. The current transportation level, and it goes beyond, in many states, a sense of convenience during peak hours. I have included information from other states that list it as a prime time for increased accidents. To say that it is not an issue of safety is a choice that this commission has made, or this state has made. But I can assure you that if I have a child that has to be picked up at school, and I'm trying to get the only way to that school, and traffic is backed up, I'm going to try to make my way around it one way or a level or another, and it could lead to accidents, and it has. So I feel that as long as this commission is going to use district policy, as all the states that I came in contact, they use district policy to outline where they are to the commissioners or to the cities in those cases, what the actual level of function is at a time where development is going to be placed on that road. And it certainly is not level of service A or C, it's level of service F currently that we're talking about. And you know, this commission has the ability to view that in a way that the city of Boise or Meridian does not. you have the capacity to look at the direction that your staff has been provided, which is different from maybe one state to the next, and decide whether or not district policy is going to be of concern. And the mediation efforts, when a current level of service is F, has to come into play when you're looking at increased densities on these roads. Otherwise, you're enabling the developer to have a sense of entitlement because there is a request for an upzone. You give them the authority to determine continued growth on roads that are inadequate for the traffic currently, let alone upon development. Center lanes are not going to fix this situation if we're going to continue to go down Cloverdale and Victory with the development that is at this time being proposed on a map, just on a map. So I'm urging the commissioners to look more diligently at the level of service and consider it the way it should be considered, as a guideline for continued development. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Betty? Well, Mr. Woods.
Thank you, President Baker. Betty, I want to thank you for coming today and for your testimony. I've got some questions for you, if you would like. Don't mean to cross-examine you. They won't be difficult questions, but I think that you have spent a tremendous amount of time on the issue of growth and infrastructure, and you deserve a lot of credit for bringing to our attention those issues. My thoughts are, in terms of allowing this to go to a night hearing, I'm undecided on that, but my concern is that it's getting a bunch of people here for a night meeting only to hear what my view is of how land use and transportation go together here might be a little bit frustrating. The issue of whether compact density is appropriate here or not is solely with City of Boise and Ada County. We have no say on that, and I think through some of these work sessions, we've been trying to educate our fellow elected officials at the city and county level and whoever else would like to listen about that fact. I think the issue that's before us here is that the staff has laid out conditions that mitigate the development's impact over and above what would be required if it were at level of service C or B or A. There wouldn't be any ability to require the developer to do things off-site, but the staff has, recommended that here. All that being said, whether or not the timing of this development is appropriate, given our schedule of infrastructure improvements, that's something that the city or the county have to decide. It's our job to say, we have a plan, we've put together a capital improvement plan that serves the comprehensive plans of the city. And it's going to take us 20 years to implement that. And if we have projected Cloverdale to be widened between 2021 and 2026, if the city thinks that there are other comfort factors that make that insufferable, then they should deny the application. It's not a basis for us to deny the application in my view. It's what we're charged with doing is providing the infrastructure to support the comprehensive plans, and what I've said time and again is that we can't accommodate everything at once. The pattern of how growth is going to occur is something that's difficult and takes discipline, and I think we need our partners, the land use agencies, to listen to what we say and then to make those judgment calls that are issues of comfort. I mean, the issue of congestion, I'm sensitive to what you're saying. We get, and we read telesystems every day. People are concerned about speeding in their neighborhood, cut through traffic. Those are hard to read. It's hard to for us to feel like we can't do anything about that, you know, but to a degree, you know, there's hardly any community that builds its way out of congestion. I mean, it's just something we need to continue to try our best and to do. But the question of, you know, whether that density is appropriate, whether or not the approval should be, you know, limited until Cloverdale is widened because of comfort factors, those are things that, you know, are in the city's ballpark. So I wanted you to have a chance to respond to what I've said, just because you've been here a lot. And, you know, again, I don't want to just have people carve out time to come down here only to hear that spiel and walk out of here frustrated. So I'll give you a chance to react to that.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, Commissioner Woods, I appreciate you giving me a chance to state why this is so important an issue. First of all, I do feel that an item that requests a waiver should come before a waiver of LOS, should come before the people that it's going to affect the most. So that's why I'm asking for this to be deferred until the evening meeting. Secondly, the fact that the commissioners have to grant a waiver. A waiver means that there's a policy that it doesn't quite live up to speed. And so staff is asking you to grant a waiver for a level of service. Now, if everything was okay with the situation on Cloverdale or Victory, there would be no need for a waiver. But you have to ask yourself, why is the district policy, why has it not been changed? Why is there still a waiver of district policy that is required from the commission to make this right? I think the Southwest Ada County Alliance as a whole is continuing to ask that question. If the police department had a policy, would they continue to provide waivers? If in this case, it really went a long way to provide guidelines for their department. I've been in many departments, and when we have a policy, we don't provide waivers. And for that reason, I think, and the fact that this affects a lot of people that are unable to make a noon meeting, I'm asking the commission to look at granting that request.
So,
Just a second.
Yes.
I think that having the police is not a good example, simply because oftentimes police use their best judgment. When I was on the council, that was one of the things that came up. So it's like you may have a policy of, you know, okay, the speed limit is 35 miles an hour, but it's within a policeman's discretion to determine whether you're going to get ticketed at 36 or 46 or 45. And then regarding waivers, I think there's some misinformation. Not maybe misinformation, but just misunderstanding of some of the issues. A waiver can be granted as long as there is a cure to the deficiency. And in this case, and in other cases, it's a question of adding some infrastructure, not even in front of the subdivision in question, but even down the road at these other collectors, for example, in this situation. And that cures a lot of the deficiency. It's also, the intersections are the most important part of the system, because that's where everything stops and goes. And at these intersections along Cloverdale and Victory and Cloverdale and Amity, it's LOSC and LOSD, which makes them way better than E and obviously way better than F. That's where the blockages come. But the waiver in this situation, or specifically, or in other situations like this, is to cure those deficiencies in order to enhance the system. And no, I don't think anyone can argue against the fact that a turn lane at Collector Streets, if it doesn't exist now and it's put into place, doesn't enhance the system. I don't think you can make that argument, so.
Can I follow up on that? Yeah, I think, so we don't pass laws, we pass policies, and the policies are pretty, they apply 90% of the time, but the 10% of the time that the specifics require consideration by the commission, then they come before the commission. So we grant waivers not to just level of service, but to access, to medians, to, those are the things that come before us for us to make decisions on whether it's appropriate or not. So in this particular case, where a series of mitigations are laid out, that's fair for people to come and say, I don't think that's enough. But when it comes to, the situations on Victory, I mean, that gets to be quite a bit of ways away from, where the application is, and I don't know how much bearing that would have. If we want to argue that the left turn, if someone wanted to come and say, we don't feel like a 3-lane is really mitigating the impact of this subdivision, we could have that discussion. Given the number of units and I just don't know how compelling an argument that would be here. But a policy, we as a commission adopt policies. They're different than laws. I mean, they're not meant to be absolutes. They're things that commonly come before us for making judgment calls. That's just a comment. And happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Woods, I feel that, first of all, you have to provide an opportunity for people that might feel that 3 lanes is not enough because they've experienced what it is right now at level of service F. If they don't have an opportunity to come because of work schedules, then you have a situation where we have requested that we have that opportunity. They live there. I live about a mile away. So I don't frequent that the way these folks would if they were before you. I urge you to consider that these folks would be here if they were able to attend, but it needs to be an evening meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question of Ms. Berman-Solomon.
Mr. Hanson?
I'd also echo Commissioner Wood's appreciation for you to be staying on top of this and following this, and your observation, which you're not the only one who has, about the level of service, and if we have to waive a policy, that the obligation is to look deeper and see whether there are other policies that could be adopted. If the policy is just focused on the comfort level of commuters at the peak, perhaps a draft policy, when we address this in the future, where there's a lot more tools, so that then the mitigation might actually be less expensive for the developer, that focuses more on safety, for example, kids crossing Cloverdale down to Hillside in the future, would be broader than just mitigating the discomfort of commuters at the peak, that there might be a wide range, and then we wouldn't have to do this one narrow tool, which we then have to waive, which we then have to accept some sort of mitigation that only addresses one aspect. Would that be the kind of movement to see if we had more tools in our toolbox? By the time, 3 weeks is a very short time to come up with some even rough draft modifications to our policy, but would that help to see that there would be some movement, some responsiveness?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Hanson, I know from talking to some of the folks that couldn't be here that the first thing that they wanted to do is get a look at the updated trips when you compute some of the subdivisions that have come forward and get kind of a more updated number in mind, which having a meeting later on in June would afford us to speak to staff and get a better idea of where we are than when some of these trips the trip analysis was last done, but do it in a way that would allow us to see a more complete vision of what has been approved and what what kind of trip level are we at that point, which would be helpful for the commissioners, I think, as well. I really do feel that having more options available to us than going to the developers when they bring something forward and saying it's level of service F, now what are you going to do about that? And then and only then, since Savannah, as far as I know, there's been a concerted effort for developers that have kind of an attitude of entitlement because they haven't had problems with getting waivers in the past. And every one of the commissioners I know have seen waiver after waiver after waiver. Now we have a real crunch in terms of capacity, and there's still these waivers being requested. Their offer to mitigate and any kind of tools that they can come forward with, I don't want to see the district policy undermined to allow growth to go forward when at this point it's really a challenge. If it can't meet the levels of service that go far beyond the state of Idaho. So I think that the answer is to hear from people to start with, people that are in that immediate vicinity, and see if they feel that what the developer has now offered to do in terms of mitigation, if it's going to end up with a funneling effect to an area that has 2 lanes, you may have some problems. I think that a better understanding will come from people that aren't here today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arnold had a question for staff.
Yes, I think it might be helpful for the members of the audience, for staff to explain what the PM peak hour is. It's from when to when?
Madam President, Commissioner Arnold, our PM peak hours are accumulated from 4 to 6 p.m., and that is the number of trips that are happening during those 2 hours. And it is I'm sorry, what?
And that's Monday
The
through
highest
Friday.
60 minutes within those two hours that we accumulate those numbers from.
And that's Monday through Friday, correct?
Correct, and during the school seasons.
So it's the highest 60 minutes during that time, which is Monday through Friday, which is 5 hours a week out of 168 hours in a week.
Yes.
I'll trust your math on that.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address us on the item of Crosswinds subdivision preliminary plat and rezone?
Yes,
Issues before us.
Commissioners. My name is Patricia Zood. I live at 4755 East Victory Road in Meridian. I'm on the corner of Victory and Cloverdale. And I'm here for, well, actually 2 reasons. The other people that represent that area were not able to be here. And I'm leaving town tomorrow for 2 weeks. So I really was hoping that you would give us a delay so the other people could be here to express their comments. I do have one comment. As I say, I live at Cloverdale and Victory. I can't get out of my driveway at any time. About a week ago, I took a right. I was going down Cloverdale. As I made the turn onto Cloverdale from Victory, I was stopped dead. The traffic was backed up from Victory to Amity. Now, I realize that the contractor or the person building this has said he would do this and that. However, it is far enough down Victory, or down Cloverdale, that even if they put in lanes, those people are going to be backed up all the way. And even the traffic from Victory all the way up to Overland is almost all the way up there every day. But I do have a question, if you wouldn't mind answering it. How is it determined? How do you determine what the load is, if it's an F? I mean, do you run things across the street to count, do the traffic count? How do you do the traffic count?
We will have the staff answer your question after you finish.
Oh, okay, I appreciate that very much. But I know that they say they're going to widen it in 1920 or in 2021 to 2026, but that could be moved down to 2036, the way things have been moved, because there's no money to do it. And the traffic out there right now is just, it's abhorrent. I sat there Monday trying to get out almost for 5 minutes to get out of my driveway. People don't let you out anymore. They're too busy on their phones or something, and they just keep going. And what a lot of people are doing now, they're cutting down, instead of coming down Cloverdale, which is abominable at that an hour from 3:30 on, they're coming down Eagle, cutting across Victory into the right-hand turn lane to make it down to Cloverdale, because that right turn lane is backed up. In fact, one fellow tried to make it, and he slid off the road into my fence. So it's getting dangerous out there. And I just see if it's 739 more cars, that's huge, absolutely huge. And I don't know how the area can stand it much longer. Even coming the other way, the traffic the other night from Cloverdale toward 5 Mile was backed up almost 3/4 of the way to 5 Mile. So 739 more cars, we'd be past 5 Mile. I'm finished. Can I?
They're not all on the road at the exact same time. That's over the period of time.
It's.
Trips per day.
I understand that, but most of the trips per day are people coming home from work.
And that's 58 trips at the peak hour. 58.
58 cars.
58 at that hour, yes.
Wow.
But we'll get your question answered, so,
Do I go over there?
no, you can sit down and she will answer your question.
Thank you, President Baker, Commissioners. Our traffic engineering techs do go out and they lay hoses down and they do get counts, and then they bring it back and they run it through their system and analyze it, and that is where we get our determinations done. Yes, on Cloverdale Road. Sorry, I had it right here. Cloverdale Road, north of Victory Road, was done on December 20th of 2017, so it's not even 6 months old, or just coming up on 6 months old. Not quite.
Okay, thank you, Stacy.
It's the same. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the commission on this item? Okay, then I will bring it back to the commission, bring it before you. Mr. Goldthorpe?
I had one question of staff. This is for Scott Spears. I've decided recently that I like to take the opportunity as often as possible to allow folks that don't understand why we are constrained regarding level of service to hear it. And I'd like, Scott, if you could, for just a couple of minutes, if you would explain the Supreme Court decisions and why we cannot utilize level of service like in other states and other areas do. What makes ACHD different?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I guess it stumped the chump because I'm not coming up with an answer to your question off the top of my head. I apologize.
Yeah, this is something that Steve's been very involved in. That being that we cannot use level of service to deny a plat, period. That is given to land use planning agencies and everywhere else in the United States. The land use planning agency and the entity that handles the roads are the same, except in Ada County, Idaho. That is why, simply stated, So we try as best we can when our staff is working with all concerned to try and mitigate some of these aspects insofar as allowable by virtue of budgets of developers, and sometimes we probably squeeze those. Insofar as their constitutional rights as property owners goes, there's a fine line there that's extremely important to keep considered. What the emphasis on level of service in the past few months has done is to focus more than ever before the importance of continuing on with what you have seen in the last 3 months here. And I know if you haven't seen it, you've heard it. And that's why and I hope you understand, that's why we cannot say no. Even if we wanted to, we can't. That's all.
Thank you. Commission, you have this before you.
Okay, well, if no one else will, Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the preliminary plat and rezone for Crosswinds subdivision in accordance with the staff report.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Woods?
Yes. Again, I have appreciated the testimony that was provided here today. I understand the request to defer this. The challenge is we've got a number of these that come before us, and my reluctance to do that is that we set a precedent, is that because someone can't make it, then we're deferring a bunch of these. I think that the opportunity today to provide written testimony is important, and I've appreciated the testimony that was provided here today. The issue that's before us is, again, we have a plan to mitigate the high-density development that's contemplated here. It's called our capital improvement plan. We developed that capital improvement plan in response to the city's comprehensive plan, and the plan is to widen Cloverdale to 5 lanes. That doesn't mean it's going to be convenient for everybody. It just means it's going to have the capacity to serve the final build-out of these comprehensive plans. So what's in question here is that this development will be mitigated by the payment of impact fees. It will also, because it is coming in a sequence where the level of service is limited on Cloverdale, it's got off-site mitigations over and above the payment of an impact fee to mitigate the impacts in the interim. And the question for us is, are those appropriate? And I think the staff has laid out mitigation measures from our perspective that address safety and the consistency of pedestrian and vehicular travel. That doesn't mean it's going to be convenient. So what I would like to see to the maker of the motion and the seconder is a comment from the commission that basically says that the conditions of approval in the staff report lay out mitigation measures that address safety and consistency of pedestrian and vehicular travel. However, the final determination of the timing of this development as it applies to our ability to implement our capital improvement plan rests with the city as a final decision.
And I'm happy to add that comment as part of the motion.
Sure. Hold on with that. Don't quite understand it, but it's fine.
So,
President?
any further discussion, Mr. Hanson?
I would just move that we defer this until the meeting on June 27th to consider whether there are other tools, whether the public brings them in or our staff in our toolbox beyond simply level of service.
So that's a substitute motion?
Substitute motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. So the original motion is before us. Is there any further discussion?
Well, I just comment, I don't know how we would, I mean, this is an application that's been submitted, you know, how you would change the rules of the game. Anyway, I mean, that legally doesn't seem to be possible. I think what's before us is any and all mitigation tools, whether they're pedestrian, you know, vehicular, you know, and I think that if you look at the staff report, it addresses sidewalks, addresses turning lanes, so I just don't know how we would do something like that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Oh, I would just say I would
Hanson?
check to the language of the statement. Commissioner Wood suggested that this does address safety of pedestrians. I don't know if you've seen this. I think it's mostly focused on the comfort of drivers at peak. I have a differing view as to where resources should be spent. In fact, I would see them spent in a way that would cost the developer less if they were focused more on preventing the kind of safety busing that will ultimately have to take place as high-speed traffic ends up in this neighborhood.
So I would just comment that high-speed traffic is breaking the law, so I don't know how that's relevant. And the staff report does address the connectivity and continuity of sidewalks, so those are, I've not ignored the pedestrian piece of it.
Yeah. My concern was with the word safety, not the continuity of sidewalks. Sidewalks can be safe, they can be unsafe.
Well, I am obviously going to vote in favor of the motion since I seconded it, and I just want to point out that, well, a lot of things have been discussed today. This is quite a dense area on the east side of Cloverdale. I mean, it's almost completely built out when you look at it. When you look at the map, there's no buildable space left. And when you look on both sides of Eagle Road to the west, that's getting quite congested as well. We're experiencing explosive growth. I mean, it is what it is, and we have to just manage it as easily and as we possibly can. I will just point out that we can't really widen our way out of congestion, but we do have areas with two-lane rural roads, and believe me, Cloverdale in some places is a two-lane rural road. It's an old farm to market road. Now, eventually it will be widened to 5 lanes, but in the meantime, we can do it to 3 lanes with space for turning, and it would be a less costly system than going in right now and doing it for 5 lanes. So I think we have 2-lane roads. We can widen them to 3 where necessary, and I think that there's almost unanimous approval of that on this commission to do that. So I will call for the question now. Is there, all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 2236, which is vacation of public right-of-way known as Alamosa Street in Boise, Idaho. This is a request for adoption. This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing, and we will receive a staff report from Dave Serdar, the right-of-way supervisor.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, for the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor, ACHD. This is a public hearing for a vacation of right-of-way to the west of 5123 Alamosa Street. ACHD received an application from Marion H. Briding, an adjacent landowner, for the vacation of right-of-way to the west of Alamosa Street. The area proposed for vacation is .081 acres. The appraised value of the right-of-way is valued at $16,830, which the applicant has agreed to pay. As you can see, the vacation is located at the corner of Alamosa Street and James Street, right there. This is a more close-up view of the site. The red area is the proposed vacation. The right-of-way proposed for vacation is 50 feet wide, and currently unmaintained. As you can see, there is a little piece of some of the structure and some of the house in the right-of-way, which is why they have applied for a vacation. Staff recommendation is to adopt and sign the resolution 2236 authorizing the vacation of public right-of-way. I will remain standing for any comments or questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Does anyone wish to speak to this issue? Come on up, give your name and address for the record. I take it you're the applicant?
Thank you for this opportunity, Madam President and Commissioners. I am-
Name and address for the record.
Yes, I am Patrick House. My address is 2053 White Pine Lane in Boise. I am speaking for my sister, who is Marion H. Briding. She resides at 2530 Joetta Drive in Boise, Idaho. All I want to say, and make this very brief, is the fact that my sister owns this land. She has a disabled son that is presently living on the land. And as Mr. Sater said, this is property that butts right up against the dwelling there, actually the garage part of it. I actually don't know why that wasn't part of the lot to begin with when they did the plat on this subdivision, probably in 1930 or something like that. So that probably answers that question. We would just like to, my sister just like to be able to control that little piece of land, which is probably no bigger than this room here. It's a little over 3,000 square foot. And she just wants to have that piece of property because of the location of the property line there with this right-of-way land. It is property that nothing can be built on. To the back of it, part of it is actually into the tributary of the Boise River. And last year that whole lot was underwater by about a foot of water. So it's not a desirable piece of land for anybody but my sister. And so we would like that opportunity to buy this little piece of property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on the item? Okay, if not, I'll close the public hearing and the issue is before us.
Madam Chair, I would move to adopt Resolution 2236, declaring vacation public right-of-way known as Alamosa Street.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So, congratulations. It is done. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is resolution number 2237, vacation exchange of public right-of-way at South Kimball Place. It's a request for adoption. This is in Meridian, Idaho. This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing and we will have a staff report from Dave Serdar.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, for the record again, Dave Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for ACHD. This is a public hearing for a vacation and an exchange of right-of-way known as South Kimball Place. ACHD received an application from Trilogy Development on behalf of Heartland Homes for a vacation exchange known as South Kimball. The area proposed for vacation is 0.109 acres, and the area proposed for exchange is 0.80 acres. This is a vicinity map. Overland Road is up here, and we are just west of Maple Grove, which is over there. This is a close-up view of the area of the vacation. ACHD right-of-way goes off to the north currently and ends about right here. This is more of a better map that shows the vacation and exchange together. We can see the vacation area right here, small area of exchange right here, as well as what's going to be in there for the rest of the development. It is staff recommendation that we adopt and sign resolution number 2237, authorizing the proposed vacation exchange of public right-of-way as applicant has completed all commission and staff requirements. I'll remain standing for any questions.
Are there any questions of staff? Okay, this is,
On the applicant?
oh, okay. I just was going, you jumped the gun. was
Well,
gonna
I knew
say-
you were in a hurry.
No.
I felt
said-
it.
said this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to testify? Obviously, there is. So give your name and address for the record. And
Sorry for scaring you.
that's all right. Go ahead, Mr. Brown. Name and address for the
Tim
record.
Brown, 3161 East Springwood. Grateful to finally be at this hearing and to wrap this up. We're looking forward to moving forward with the Cloverfield subdivision and completing that right-of-way and connecting those two streets. I don't know how in the world you got that piece of unimproved right-of-way ever, but we're vacating it. So we appreciate your willingness to do so, and thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on this item? If not, I'll close the public hearing and you have it before you.
Madam President?
Ms. Arnold?
I move that we approve resolution 2237 for the vacation and exchange of right-of-way at South Kimball Place.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2237. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that concludes our regular agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the commission on any item under public communications? Okay, if not, meeting adjourned.